Good afternoon. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Good. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here moderating this event. My name is Gustavo Fonseca. I'm the Director of Programs at the Global Environment Facility. And the event here today is going to focus on climate action, finance for climate action and nature protection, which is a new roadmap on complementarity that's being developed over the past year and a half between the Global Environment Facility and the Green Climate Fund. This event is jointly organized by the Green Climate Fund and the Global Environment Facility. We are very excited to have this opportunity to present to you what we call the long-term vision on complementarity, coherence, and collaboration between the Green Climate Fund and the Global Environment Facility. We call this document the LTV, the long-term vision. And the LTV is in essence a pact and a roadmap through which the GEF and the GCF can develop their programs jointly. And it has been presented to both governing bodies of the GCF and the GEF quite recently with very, very positive feedback, including by the donors to both funds as well as the recipient countries that want more alignment between lines of climate and nature financing. So this is a very exciting moment for us. Today, the event is going to be the first on the LTV that we do publicly since the heads of both funds, Yannick Gelarec of the GCF and Carlos Manuel Rodriquez of the GEF, have spearheaded. These two leaders led the development of the LTV, and this is a great opportunity for you to hear from them directly on their vision, their aspirations, their expectations for the implementation of these plans. These two institutions and their leaders saw a strategic need to define specific areas of cooperation in climate action and nature protection where complementarity of action might be most effective. This includes also the two adaptation funds that the GEF manages, the Least Developed Countries Fund and the Special Climate Change Fund. How the two funds can work together is one of the most frequently asked questions, and some of you may want to know how these two institutions can support major initiatives together with the potential for some game-changing impacts on climate, on nature, people, and society. Some of the recipient countries, the beneficiary countries, the developing countries that are being funded by both funds, they are interested in developing joint investments. We support both the GCF and for the GEF with more ambitious plans through which we can catalyze domestic resources and also introduce policy coherence. Many stakeholders, including donors, are key to see how we can enhance impacts and also increase the value for money that we can help countries to achieve. So others have told us that they see these two institutions as very important to help build momentum for action, recognizing that GCF and GEF can help to scale up and amplify the positive influence by joining forces. This moment here is great for us because we have the presence of Her Excellency, the Minister of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica, Minister Andrea Meza, who's with us today. And she's going to talk a little bit about the expectations for the LTV coming from the perspective of Costa Rica. We also very honored to have with us, and we're going to hear from her later on in the program, Her Excellency Marianne Bekaya, the Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development from the Islamic Republic of Mauritania. So with this, and then finally we'll hear from Brian O'Donnell, who's the Director of the Campaign for Nature, and he's going to share his perceptions on what he will hear from the speakers today. So with no further ado, I'd like to ask Minister Andrea Meza to make her remarks. She might have to leave a little earlier because she has another commitment. So thanks, Minister, for being here with us.
Thank you, Gustavo, and thank you for the invitation. I think that this is a very important event. Hello? Yeah. Now I need to start again. Thank you, Gustavo, and thank you for the invitation. Um, Thank you, Minister, for being here. It's a pleasure, and to all of you here as panelists. This is a very important event, and Gustavo, you were requesting our expectation from this long-term complementarity agreement and vision, and our expectation is high. Is high because we know that this is what we required to be more effective and to scale up a lot of good practices, a lot of good interventions that we normally do and cover with GF projects. With GF projects, we normally go and do a lot of innovation, we do a lot of technical assistance, there is a lot of lessons learned that we normally would do with Jeff money. But then normally everything stops there and we don't find a facility where we can bring investments to a lot of these good practices and technical assistance and a lot of pilot projects. I mean, I think that if we probably ask to the room here, are you tired of pilot projects? Probably everybody will come and say, yes, we are. But pilot projects are so important. It is not about only pilot projects, it's about scaling up normally those projects. And I think that this is where this alliance has a lot of potential, because the potential normally to scale up a lot of these initiatives and pilot projects, it's with the Green Climate Fund. And this is a very interesting alliance where we can see, I will say, a change in the way that we have been doing this. Normally, when you see the numbers of and the money and the budget that we will require, it is that we need huge amounts of money, and we need to mobilize also public money. That is so important. We need to have these enabling policy frameworks, but we also need a fund that can take risk. And this is a little bit the role of the Green Climate Fund, that can take risks in the climate and the biodiversity agenda, and that then will hopefully facilitate to bring private money as well. Because at the end, we're very clear that with all the trillions that we will need to change our economies, to make them carbon neutral, to make them nature positive, and to have these visions, which is at the end a big transformation, a big energy transition, and to really continue with the protection of nature, we will need to mobilize trillions. And the first step is to at least be effective in the alignment of these first projects. And normally, if we manage to do a good financial architecture, and I think that this is also what is the other interesting part, we will be able then to mobilize more public and private money. And so this is a little bit our expectation is high. We really support this integrated approach. We in Costa Rica even worked a little bit in this area of working with one of the projects that recently was approved in the GEF related to the train, but with a very systemic approach of also of transforming the city, of making a lot of sustainable mobility issues, and integrated a lot of these agendas in a very transformative way. So yeah, very happy. I think we need to celebrate this alliance.
Minister Meza, before we let you go, this is a prime opportunity. You have the leaders of the two largest funds that deal with climate and nature. What's your first ask for both of them? What would you ask them concretely that they do together with you in Costa Rica?
I think that we need to guarantee mechanisms that will allow us to deliver the money in a faster way. And I think that I recognize that the Green Climate Fund has been improving their mechanisms and have been very effective in delivering. It's something that we recognize. I think that with the GEF, we also have the opportunity to enhance the way that we can be delivering this money. At the end, it's about access to money, but it's also access to money in very practical terms. And sometimes in both institutions, sometimes it's complex, right? But I think that we have an area of improvement there, and working together, I think it's fantastic, because if we have like a clear vision that we can start, you know, with the GEF, probably, hopefully, then we will have like a fast track, hopefully, with the Green Climate Fund. If that concept is proven, if we have demonstrated that the pilot project works, and that we just need to mobilize something to scale up, then I hope you guys talk to each other under this agreement and delivers the money in a very fast and effective way.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Minister Meza. I'm going to now ask Yannick Gelarec and Carlos Manuel Rodriguez to react to the minister's remarks, and how also you put the LTV in the context of some of the challenges that she raised and some of the potentials that she highlighted. Yannick.
First, many thanks, Gustavo, and many thanks, Andrea, for this inspiring remark. Hopefully, we will not disappoint you, because if we were to disappoint you, we will also disappoint ourselves, because we share the same ambition. The Green Climate Fund is a partnership institution. We do not originate, we do not implement our projects. We co-develop and co-finance. So we are as good as our partners. And for a very long time, the only way to partner with us was through an accreditation process, where basically you had to be accredited, and once you were accredited, you could access our resources. And right now we have 113 accredited entities, from some of the largest commercial banks to MDBs, NDBs, UN agencies, civil society organizations. And research agencies, we share part of the cost, part of the risk, in order to enable them to do things we have never done before. And for a long while, we thought that's it. We are a partnership accreditation. We are a partnership organization through accreditation. And we started a consultation with our private sector partners, and asking them what will be helpful in terms of new mechanism that we could develop. And so I was expecting direct access. We want a direct investment. We want you to act as a direct investment, or local currency investment. Guess what? The answer that we got from them was convening power, syndication. You provide us so often first lost equity. What will be, that means we have a private equity fund. If something goes wrong, we are the first to lose our money. And what our private sector partners told us, you know, what will be often interesting for us, much more than first lost equity, is that you serve as an anchor investor and a syndicator. That means you are the first to put your money on the table, and we will give you the same return than anybody else. But because you are the first, you are also in a unique position to help us to close the fund, and to reach out to other donors, and to create a syndicate for developing very, very large initiatives. And that we were a bit surprised, and this message kept being reinforced by a number of partners. For example, I was in one country that's in Europe that has free investment fund. The free investment funds basically said the same thing. Can you start acting as a syndicator? It's not only Minister Andrea that basically said we love pilot projects, but we cannot only go for pilot projects. Yesterday we had a very strong intervention from the Brazilian minister saying, guys, no, we don't have time. We have to reach scale. And therefore syndication will be extremely important. No, syndication, you need a center of gravity. And if GEF and GCF basically make it a priority for them to offer a syndication service to the entire climate change and biodiversity community, our critical mass is so large that we become a very, very attractive proposition to everybody. And that was, for me, it's the first expectation that I will have from this alliance is that we become syndicators. And when we speak about the Amazonia, when we speak about the Great Green Wall Initiative in Africa, when we speak maybe about the Congo basin, because everybody will know that GEF and GCF, doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter what you say, at the end of the day, we will coordinate their activities. We will create a center of gravity for everybody to align their information. And maybe all of us together, we will not be speaking about 1 million, we will not be speaking about 100 millions, we might be speaking about 10 billion, because that's the scale we have to reach for these unique ecosystems. So that would be the first thing. And I think the proof will be in the pudding very, very soon. Are we to be able to coordinate for Amazonia, for Great Green Wall Initiative, for the Congo Forest, for Corridor Seco? The second thing that for me is important is that to leverage the comparative advantages of the organization. And for example, GEF is able to rely on 30 years of expertise and knowledge to identify the new approach, the new innovation that we have to go after. And in some regards, it's nimbler than we are. And so we will be always on the lookout for ideas, initiatives that GEF has supported with the countries it serves, and that we could scale up. And for me, an example, a very good example is the craft project. We know that we are falling behind in terms of adaptation. We know that we are falling behind in terms of technology transfer. Craft project is basically a private equity project to invest in innovative adaptation technologies, from weather analytics to recycling technologies, etc. You know, for this project, craft projects, we are putting on the table $150 million of first loss equity. It's quite a lot of money, huh? And we will not have made that decision if GEF had not invested 3 years earlier, developing for us a taxonomy of adaptation technologies, where we are sure that we are speaking about adaptation, and testing the model, ensuring that actually there is a demand, there is a deal flow. And that, for me, it's a beautiful collaboration. And I hope that, Carlos, you will have a bit of free time at COP26, because I will very much like to showcase it. And the third type of cooperation, it's everything to make your life easier. Whenever you deal with public money, there are some requirements. It's not private money. You have a bottom line in terms of accountability, transparency. You give money to a country, you have 199 countries that ask you, why have you given money to this country? Why Costa Rica? Why not Guatemala? Why not Honduras? Why not Indonesia? So de facto, some of our procedures, by nature, will be a little bit easier. But it doesn't mean that they cannot be harmonized. And it will be really great all organizations need a result management framework, and it will be great if we are speaking about the same indicators so that you don't have to repeat it. It will be great if we share a common understanding of the notion of incremental cost, additionality, etc. And that is another area where I believe we could make a lot of progress.
Thank you very much, Yannick. So, very good. So, Carlos Manuel, you heard from Yannick that you are now at the realm of an organization that has 30 years of experience and today manages to support 5 different conventions that together span quite a lot of the global problems that the global environment is facing. So what's your vision on this partnership? What do you see the GEF being most effective in working with them?
Thank you so much, Gustavo, Minister Meza, Minister Yannick, Brian. You know, the LTB is the right thing in the right moment. Let me remind you all some things that probably because of the pandemic, we forgot where we were a few years ago. In the last IUCN Congress in Hawaii, we spoke very little about climate adaptation and climate mitigation. Today, 5 years later, it is everywhere. It is everywhere. A year and a half ago, we were talking and negotiating different streams, you know, CBD, UNCCD, and UNFCCC. As a matter of fact, we were very concerned by the fact a year ago, we were very concerned that even though nature is 30% of the solution, it only receives 1% of the climate funds. This is where Andrea, Meza, and myself began thinking, how do we bring together those things? And we had the golden opportunity to organizing UNFCCC pre-COP in Costa Rica. And then we met this guy in his campaign, who really began putting together all the different elements. And we had and we created the High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People, who aimed for 30% conservation of the land and the oceans in a climate event, the Costa Rica's pre-COP 25. And then we went to Madrid, COP 25, where basically everybody recognizes that it makes a lot of sense to use nature as a cost-effective way to mitigate climate change and adapt to climate change. And since then, everybody knows the story. Probably we forget the origin of this story, but that proves to us that we did great in bringing together both conventions. We got the third convention, we had all the conventions, and we come to realize that integrated approach is crucial. That same process did happen with the GEF. The GEF for probably 15 years was investing in the climate convention, doing projects, implementing projects in the climate convention, in the biodiversity convention, in the land degradation convention, in the chemical conventions, and other things. And as a big achievement, a few years ago, we allowed countries to be able to flexibilize their focal area resources for these conventions up to 30%. Today, in our GEF 8 proposal, we are proposing 100% flexibility in the focal area. We used to feel a lot of resistance and even pushback by the conventions when we were proposing going more in terms of integration. Now they're full on board. So this is the right thing to do, the LTB, in the right moment. Not just for that reason, but for another, which is extremely important. Yannick can be the best fundraiser in the world. Manuel can follow Yannick's effort that we will never have enough money to fully narrow the financial gap. The climate, the biodiversity, the sustainability financial gap. The GEF is the largest financial supporter of resources for biodiversity conservation for countries. We're investing $400 million a year, and that is just 0.5% of what we should be mobilizing today, to be on track on what we call the Aichi targets. And if we project ourselves to the next framework, we are way out of route. And if we put the numbers behind the climate finance gap, it is incredibly huge. And it's not just a climate financial gap. Also, we got the very complex responsibility to balance mitigation action with adaptation actions, mobilization of resources for mitigation and for adaptation. Let me remind you all that 80% of what is invested in climate change is in climate mitigation, and out of that, 80% is being invested in industrialized countries. So we got a huge work there. But since then, a couple of years ago, particularly last year, we were able to put a lot of economic information and began to really understanding how do we mobilize resources from all sources so we can be smart, efficient in narrowing that financial gap. The LTB is a direct response from our funds to that context. It's directly aiming to that context because we don't have enough time. We will never have enough time. I will say that we need to be on track for the we need to be on track in the 1.5% to achieve the 30%, and we need to achieve the 30% to be on track with the 1.5%. It is evident to us. Maximizing, optimizing our resources is our responsibility. It's our responsibility to our taxpayers, to the taxpayers that are supporting our funds, and it's our responsibility to recipient countries who are being benefited by our funds. So we're beginning this new endeavor. This is our first public event where in person where we're doing this, and it's a World Conservation Congress. For me, this is meaningful. This is extremely strong, the message that we're sending here as we continue working in the full implementation on this. So thank you so much for joining us. Thanks, Yannick, for your wisdom, your vision on bringing our institution in this LTB, because again, it's the right thing to do at the right moment. Thank you, Gustavo.
Well, thanks very much, Carlos Manuel. And as being your first event live, I think the two of you make a great pair. I think you're gonna have success working together. So now it's our pleasure to ask Her Excellency Minister Becaia to make her remarks. You've heard here already about the collaboration that is going on the Great Green Wall Initiative. Mauritania is a part of that effort. So there's more to come. So your views here will be most welcome.
Thank you so much. First, thank you so much for the invitation. Sorry, I will speak in French. Tout d'abord, je voudrais souligner l'importance et la bienvenue de cette initiative qui vise à, si j'ai bien compris, à mettre en place une feuille de route pour améliorer la complémentarité entre le Fonds pour l'environnement mondial et le Fonds vert pour le climat. Cette complémentarité et ces synergies sont fondamentaux parce qu'aujourd'hui, nous savons tous, et tous les derniers rapports scientifiques, que ce soit les rapports du GIEC ou sur la biodiversité, sur les écosystèmes, nous montrent qu'il y a une réelle complémentarité entre les questions de désertification, les questions liées à la biodiversité, le changement climatique, les questions sur les pollutions. On parle aujourd'hui beaucoup de l'impact... Ah, ok, sorry. L'impact des pollutions plastiques sur les océans. Donc tout ça est lié et aujourd'hui on a la question du Covid-19 qui est arrivé et qui nous a montré aussi les liens entre les questions environnementales et une crise économique qui est de plus en plus développée.
First of all, I want to welcome this initiative that provides a roadmap to improve the complementarity between the two funds. It's a really welcome initiative. And I want to stress the interlinkages that are between the challenges, including desertification, plastic pollution,
biodiversity,
and
climate change, desertification.
You speak better English than me. Please.
The problem is that I think in French. Okay. Donc, je considère qu'il y a un intérêt aujourd'hui d'un effort concerté entre les deux fonds. À quoi ça va nous servir? D'abord, la collègue parlait donc des projets pilotes. Moi, je dirais qu'effectivement, aujourd'hui, on a besoin de financer des interventions de plus grande envergure, en tout cas dans nos pays, de plus grande envergure aussi bien au niveau spatial, mais également au niveau multidimensionnel, parce qu'on l'a vu, on veut sortir de la notion de projets qui sont limités à des projets intégrés, multidimensionnels, qui vont traiter à la fois des questions de diversification, des questions de disponibilité des ressources en eau, des questions qui sont liées aux moyens d'existence des populations, aux questions liées à l'énergie. Et quand on visite les pays africains et le milieu rural, on se rend compte réellement aujourd'hui de la problématique de la dégradation des terres. Dans un pays comme la Mauritanie, c'est 80% du territoire national qui subit les questions de la dégradation des terres. Quand je vais en mission à l'intérieur du pays, les populations me parlent de besoins en ressources en eau, d'améliorer les systèmes alimentaires, les questions de sécurité alimentaire, d'accès à l'énergie. Donc les fonds doivent pouvoir répondre de manière intégrée à l'ensemble de ces problématiques.
So this is really timely because we need concerted action. Mr. Meza talked about the limitations of pilot initiatives, and at this time, point in time, we need really to scale up both spatially, but in terms of the multiple dimensions that projects need to tackle. This includes land degradation, and it links with water scarcity. In a country like Mauritania, 80% of the country is under land degradation, and people really are in dire need of water security, better water access, and to fight against water scarcity, energy access as well, and both have to be both water, land degradation, energy access have to be tackled together.
D'accord. Je pense aussi qu'un effort concerté des deux fonds va permettre de contribuer à améliorer la cohérence des conventions internationales. Quelqu'un le disait, on a une série de conventions internationales qui traitent des questions d'environnement, les conventions de Rio, la convention de Stockholm, la convention de Minamata, etc. Et depuis plus d'une décennie, on parle d'amener toutes ces conventions à travailler ensemble. Et pour nous, les pays en développement, c'est très compliqué parce on s'est engagé donc à contribuer à l'effort mondial, mais en même temps, on a à travers donc notre contribution à cette convention, on est appelé à faire des rapports pour chacune des conventions. Chaque convention a ses spécificités, a ses procédures. Et c'est un peu compliqué pour des pays comme nous de répondre aux différentes procédures. Déjà parce que on a des capacités qui sont beaucoup plus limitées, et le fait d'avoir cette cohérence au niveau des conventions internationales, cette cohérence au niveau des fonds, ça va nous faciliter à nous aussi tout ce qui relève du monitoring et de l'évaluation.
I also hope that collaboration between the two funds will help improve the coherence and synergies between the different multilateral environmental agreements. Developing countries face dire challenges with the multiple reporting requirements under the different conventions, and greater consolidation between the funds might help with that, with our challenge we're facing.
Je pense aussi qu'on gagnerait donc à travers cet effort concerté à mutualiser les expériences passées des deux fonds, l'expérience de 30 ans du Fonds mondial pour l'environnement, ensuite le Fonds vert sur le climat est venu. Et donc je pense qu'il y a énormément de leçons apprises à travers tous ces projets pilotes, mais qu'on ne capitalise pas suffisamment aujourd'hui. Il n'y a pas une assez bonne visibilité de ces expériences-là au niveau des pays. Et donc cette initiative, cette nouvelle vision nous permettrait justement de mieux capitaliser là-dessus.
Also, this initiative will help countries to bank on the cumulative experience of both funds, the 30 years of history of the GEF and the more recent history of the GCF, so that at the country level, we better know what works and what doesn't work, and we really need to build on this common shared experience of the two funds.
Voilà. Maintenant, je vais un peu parler de l'initiative africaine de la Grande Muraille Verte. Donc, vous savez que 11 pays du Sahel se sont retrouvés et ont créé cette fameuse initiative de la Grande Muraille Verte il y a plus d'une décennie déjà. Et je pense, et je vous dirai pourquoi, cette initiative de la Grande Muraille Verte offre aujourd'hui, je pense, un cadre idéal pour la mutualisation des efforts de financement du Fonds vert sur le climat et du Fonds pour l'environnement mondial. Parce qu'il ne s'agit pas d'une initiative uniquement ou purement environnementale. C'est un programme multidimensionnel qui vise à promouvoir un développement intégré au niveau des pôles des territoires ruraux et qui vise donc à répondre à la fois aux objectifs de la Convention sur la désertification, mais également à l'accord de Paris sur le climat, au maintien de la biodiversité, à la lutte contre la pauvreté, la sécurité alimentaire dans les territoires ruraux. C'est donc vraiment une initiative multidimensionnelle et pour laquelle, pendant les 10 années passées, nous avons évolué. Des progrès sont là, même s'ils sont encore insuffisants. Mais cette initiative a très peu bénéficié des financements internationaux. Ce sont les budgets des États, les budgets publics qui ont permis jusqu'à présent d'arriver à ces résultats-là. Et je pense que de par ces objectifs multidimensionnels, c'est vraiment une opportunité. Et je pense que l'animateur nous demandait un peu quelle initiative justement cette cohérence pourrait financer. Et je pense que le fait, cette complémentarité entre les deux fonds, si les fonds travaillent ensemble, je pense qu'ils pourraient vraiment contribuer à faire passer de l'échelle actuelle, justement, la Grande Muraille Verte à une échelle beaucoup plus importante. Je rappelle que ce programme de la Grande Muraille Verte vise à l'horizon 2030 la restauration de 100 millions d'hectares de terres dégradées et à créer 10 millions d'emplois verts productifs à l'horizon 2030. Et il s'intègre dans l'initiative des Nations Unies de donc la décennie de la restauration des terres dégradées et beaucoup d'autres initiatives, des initiatives régionales. Alors, oui, pardon.
Yes. Now I want to talk about the Green Grain Wool initiative that was launched around 10 years ago by 11 Sahelian countries, which is a good example to showcase the potential for collaboration between the two funds. It is a program that is not solely an environmental program. It tackles multiple dimensions. It's really integrated. It responds to the UNCCD agenda, but also to the Paris Agreement, and try to tackle food security and poverty at the same time. Up until now, the Green Great Wall Initiative benefited relatively little from international funding. It was mainly national budget that contributed to that initiative. And it's a great opportunity that the GCF and the GEF can collaborate to scale up the Green Great Wall. As a reminder, the objective of this initiative is to restore 100 million hectares by 2030 and to create 10 million green productive jobs by 2030.
Thank you. So, pour finir, nos attentes. Quelles sont les attentes donc, des pays africains, des pays du Sahel par rapport à cette donc, nouvelle vision que vous avez d'améliorer la synergie entre les deux fonds? D'abord, je l'ai dit, c'est d'avoir des financements beaucoup plus conséquents, beaucoup plus importants à la hauteur des défis. Parce que tous les projets qui ont eu lieu jusqu'à présent ont permis de développer des initiatives, de développer des pratiques durables. Mais nous avons aujourd'hui réellement, par rapport à l'ensemble des défis, besoin de passer à des programmes intégrés d'envergure beaucoup plus importante. Parmi les recommandations que je voudrais faire et que je tire donc des leçons de la mise en œuvre des différents projets financés par le FEM et par le Fonds vert climat dans nos pays, on souhaiterait vraiment qu'il y ait une réduction des délais de formulation et d'adoption des projets-programmes. Parfois, il se passe 2 à 3 ans minimum entre l'idée de projet, la conception de l'idée de projet et l'approbation au niveau des différents boards, au niveau du... Et entre-temps, parfois, les priorités ont même changé. Parfois, il y a des nouvelles choses, des nouveaux enjeux qui viennent. Donc, on souhaiterait vraiment que les deux fonds puissent travailler ensemble pour réduire un peu les délais de formulation. Ensuite, je voudrais aussi recommander qu'il puisse y avoir un pool d'expertise internationale associé à des experts nationaux qui puissent être disponibilisés par les fonds pour appuyer la formulation des projets. Parce que souvent, la formulation des projets est un peu laissée au pays et parfois, nous n'avons pas réellement toutes les capacités qu'il faut pour formuler des projets. Et moi, j'ai vu personnellement des projets qui sont formulés et je trouve en fait qu'ils ne répondent pas réellement aux priorités nationales, peut-être aux objectifs prioritaires nationaux, mais pas dans leur démarche de mise en œuvre. Et ça, c'est un enjeu clé, parce qu'un projet qui est mal formulé au départ, il ne peut pas avoir un résultat sur le terrain concret. Ensuite, l'évaluation des projets. Okay, sorry.
So now, let me talk about the expectation of African countries for the collaboration between the two funds. Of course, we expect more funding that is commensurate with the challenges we face. But also the recommendations from the lessons of the GEF and GCF project that have been implemented in Mauritania is firstly to reduce delays. There are sometimes 2 to 3 years between board approval of a project and the actual start of the project. And within 2-3 years, priorities often change. We would also appreciate a pool of experts, of international experts that could help countries in their project design. We often lack the capacity to design projects that truly respond to country challenges, and that would help us tremendously to be able to tap into a pool of experts.
Je pense aussi qu'on a des efforts à faire en termes d'évaluation de ces projets que nous mettons en œuvre sur le terrain pour pouvoir réellement apprendre des expériences passées. Et là, je pense qu'il y a quelques lacunes sur lesquelles on pourrait travailler, notamment renforcer l'appui technique des agences de mise en œuvre qui mettent en œuvre les programmes du FEM ou bien du Fonds vert. Je pense que les agences techniques gagneraient à nous donner un peu plus leur expertise que ce qu'ils font pour le moment. Donc c'est une recommandation. Ensuite, la question des indicateurs. Parfois dans les projets, on a des indicateurs qui dans leur formulation ne sont pas toujours mesurables sur le terrain, en tout cas par nos pays. Et il y a des lacunes en matière de données aussi. Donc je souhaiterais vraiment que dans les futurs programmes, on mette l'accent et qu'il y ait réellement un budget, une expertise conséquente pour appuyer la collecte des données dont nous avons besoin pour faire le suivi sur le terrain de l'évolution des écosystèmes. Et ça, je pense que c'est quelque chose qui manque au niveau de beaucoup de pays africains. Je vais juste finir en disant, quelqu'un parlait du transfert technologique. Le renforcement des capacités, le transfert des technologies, l'appui à la recherche scientifique sont des éléments clés sans lesquels, si on n'évolue pas là-dessus, l'Afrique ne pourra pas faire un pas en avant. Et donc, je souhaiterais aussi que ça soit pris en compte. Donc, je vous remercie beaucoup de votre attention et merci encore de m'avoir invité.
And 4 last recommendations. First, we would appreciate more efforts on evaluation of the projects and learning lessons from them. Also to strengthen technical capacity support that is provided in countries. We also face data challenges and capacity to measure the indicators are included in projects. So we would also need capacity building to be able to better measure the progress and the impact of projects. And so finally, I would conclude by saying that technology transfer, capacity building, and support in any scientific endeavor will be key for Africa in the coming decade. And with that, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. This was fantastic. We have so many suggestions on how we can move forward. So thank you. This is extremely rich. So we will now ask Brian O'Donnell, the Director of the Campaign for Nature, to share his views with us. And if we have time at the end, I'd like to come back to Carlos Manuel and to Yannick for just a couple of final remarks. Brian, please.
Thank you, Gustavo. When my daughter, who's a young student, joined Climate March recently, or last year, I should say, she and her classmates drew pictures. And they didn't draw a picture just of energy and smokestacks. They drew a picture of the planet Earth. And they drew a picture of nature and wildlife. And kids understand inherently the interconnection between the climate, biodiversity, nature. They think of our one functioning planet just inherently. But as we get older, we seem to get more and more divided into these branches of science and policy and more down our specific expertise. And sometimes we forget that big picture. But that's why I think this is such an exciting event today. In June, the world's leading climate and biodiversity scientists put out a report. The IPBES and IPCC scientists for the first time collaborated on a report, and they said, just as Carlos Manuel had said, we cannot solve the climate or the biodiversity crisis in isolation. These have to be integrated, which is why this is such an exciting and such a special day to hear about the leadership that we're seeing from Yannick and from Carlos Manuel, because institutionally, both of those institutions have this gravity to pull away and focus in an area. And it takes real leadership to challenge that institutional gravity that's pulling you to be more siloed, and to pull your head above that, and to pull your head above what you've been doing for a few years and say, wait a second, how can we do this differently? How can we work together? Even though I have a different mandate, or I have a different board, or I have different constituencies, the Earth is calling for us to do something in an integrated way, and that took real leadership. So first, I just want to congratulate Yannick and Carlos Manuel for this. This is a true leadership that you've shown on this, and very, very exciting to see. I think but I want to challenge you to go one step further on this. We know if there's an area that biodiversity, nature conservation, and climate come together, it's on the territories of indigenous peoples. And when you look at a study that the Rainforest Foundation from Norway put out this year, it showed how tiny the amount of money gets to those communities. And so now I know there are a lot of structural barriers to get that to happen, but you're both smart, you're both innovative people. I'm hoping that this year, by these COPs, you can think about how can we structure things that money can truly get to the front lines, to these defenders, to secure territorial rights so that we can address this, because I think that's foundational to meet 30 by 30. It's foundational to meet 1.5. And so that's a big challenge that I think is the next step in this initiative. And then finally, I want to say that the private sector can learn quite a bit from what you're doing. The philanthropic sector, I work with a lot of other foundations, is still too siloed. We're behind what you've done. On September 22nd, at the UN General Assembly Week, we're going to see an announcement of a number of philanthropists about funding for this, and we need to challenge them. How are you integrating? How is your biodiversity finance working for climate? How is your climate finance helping biodiversity? Are you thinking about these things? And as the minister said so properly, how do we do this as quickly? The climate crisis is accelerating faster than I think even some of our fears were. The biodiversity crisis is on us right now. The speed and breaking through, how do we get that money out as quickly as possible to these communities? And that's always a challenge. And so I'm glad that both of you are in the positions you are. You've shown incredible leadership, and you have the support of the conservation community, and any way that we can help bring the private philanthropy together, bring conservation organizations together, and follow you, we pledge to help, and thanks for making this possible.
Thank you very much, Brian. Very good. And it's great to hear that. It's great to hear that true public funds are ahead of the game on innovation in relation to private foundations. It's a first in this world, but it's good to hear that. So we only have a few minutes. So why don't you pass to Carlos Manuel the microphone? Carlos, 2 minutes, and then 2 minutes with Yannick, and then we can conclude.
Well, thank you so much, Minister, for your words and your recommendations, and Brian, to your encouraging words of wisdom and vision. This is the beginning of a process. In the beginning of the process that will take us to that aspiration of being nature positive, carbon neutral, and pollution free. Because that's another element that we need to bring into this. I see not just the positive complement of climate change and nature, but this is a good way by which we can help solve all the problems, because at the end of the day, what we need to really address is the consumption and production pattern. This integrated approach within these funds will help us help countries deal with this huge challenge of the system change, particularly moving away from this irrational economic model that looks to unlimited growth without the recognition of the planetary boundaries, and how we should go into a more rational, inclusive, and circular economy. Because that's the most important element that we need to understand. Governments, the same way that these two funds are talking, needs to generate political agreements on how they should respond from our side. Because we can maximize and optimize our resources. We can help narrow the global financial gap that we're still far from getting there. And it won't be until governments begin understanding two things. One is, what is the right roadmap for them to address those subsidies, negative investment, and perverse incentives? And this is not just a matter of having an enlightened head of state pulling for that, because you will be touching the economic interests of business as usual. So that's a very complicated issue. But as we work together in this effort where the innovation is being complemented by the scale, countries will feel empowered and enlightened to address the whole effort towards a new consumption and production model. And then the second element, which is extremely important, we tend to believe that we can do the leap forward in terms of sustainability with the same institutional framework that has created the problem. And we tend to believe that by just fixing the market and being able to address more efficiently those very specific issues, we will solve the problem. It won't be until we come to realize that we have a major institutional failure right next to the major market failure. We need to redesign the work, the way we have organized our public agencies in a way that they don't continue working on silos. We have 4 to 6 agencies working at the country level managing natural resources, renewable and non-renewable natural resources. That is why the Minister of Environment doesn't carry well with the Minister of Agriculture and the Minister of Energy. They don't share a common vision. And I don't see 4 or 6 agencies dealing with education or poverty alleviation or health. So there's a need to address this issue, and I tend to believe that through this LTB, we can help countries generate both things, addressing those negative investment in moving into an institutional framework that responds directly to our aspiration of sustainability. Thank you, Gustavo.
Yannick, you have the last word.
Yeah, I will be very brief because I can see that you're getting a bit jittery in terms of
This
time.
this is live, so they're gonna cut.
Okay, so very briefly, many thanks, Madame la Ministre Beccaille, for your remarks. Banco, I'm okay with taking the Great Green Wall Initiative as a very practical example. And so what I would like to propose, Carlos, is that maybe we task our respective team to look at what you are doing, what we are doing, maybe what UNCCD is doing, and that's by COP26 we try to have basically again such a joint event, this time in front of the climate change community. And because we are very excited, people are excited, we have to maintain this level of excitement, and the best way to maintain this level of excitement is to start delivering. Indicators is complex. One would think that it's simple, but this one will take time. But harmonizing our programming for the Great Green Wall Initiative, we should be able to come with a solution by COP26. And after we can maybe have a look at other ecosystems that are very dear to our heart, Amazonia, Corridor Seco, and the Congo Basin. And it will be great when we go to COP27. That's we can speak about lessons learned from our cooperation.
Thank you very much, Yannick. And to close, I would like to thank all of you and also the many people who are listening to this event online. So that's not only us, but hundreds of people have signed in. And thanks for attending. And we hope to follow up with all of you, as was suggested here, in future events. Thank you very much for your presence.
Sans doute le problème au départ avec la Grande Muraille verte,